This meeting is being recorded.
So it's more as to for one malicious actor so that they don't have the power to alter the distribution based on the messages from the other people than zero knowledge per se. And that's like similar to like, so I'm not completely, I'm not that familiar with MPC. Yeah. So that's simulatability.
Exactly. So that's the simulatability. Yeah. That's why you'll see that all the known 2-round protocols like Frost and whatever others, they don't use simulation-based definitions because you just can't simulate it. And the reason why you can't simulate it is because you're given this R from the ideal functionality, and you need to somehow make the sum of all of the RIs given by the parties equal this R. But if Jason sees all the RIs first, there's no way I can force him to give the correct RI that, you know, basically what I need as the simulator, I need to see all the corrupted parties' RIs before I give the honest parties' RIs. That's a contradiction in terms because we have this thing called rushing where we assume the adversary answers last and around, which is of course very realistic in practice. So in order to get simulatability, I need that additional round, exactly. And my argument also is that in many, if not most cases, this obsession with rounds is absurd. I'm not saying that there aren't places where it's important. I'm saying that if it's really important to you, then maybe you will compromise on your assumptions and other things that you're doing. But in the vast majority of use cases, or many use cases even, it's not. And then why do that? Why compromise on a simple, simulatable, fully simulatable solution when for something that you don't actually need?
And the protocol is asynchronous, right?
So here, this is a good discussion in general. So if you look at the whole question of synchronous versus asynchronous, in my mind, is only of interest when you want to achieve guaranteed output delivery and fairness, or not even fairness, but guaranteed output delivery. Because if you're doing security with a board, then anyway, you can't guarantee output, right? So if we have a 3-round protocol, then security or you know, synchronization doesn't matter. If we have a dishonest majority, then you can't achieve guaranteed output delivery. So if we're looking at dishonest majority, what we do is we do security with the boards. And in that case, you don't care about that. Now let's look at an asynchronous versus synchronous scenario. So we have 3 rounds. Okay, if it's synchronous, when everybody speaks, gets, and it's but the adversary is rushing. In asynchronous setting, it can take a long time for a message to arrive to me. And the question is, what am I supposed to do? But if it's security with the board, the answer is very simple. Wait. Eventually time out. Who cares? Worst case, you abort. So aborting is allowed. Now, what happens if you receive Jason, Nico, and Miguel's message before you receive Maya and Ventali's message? What do? What are you supposed to do? The answer is wait. Very simple.
Yeah.
You will only send your 2nd round message when you received everybody's 1st round message. If all the honest parties will only send their 2nd round message after they received all their 1st round message, and not only send their 3rd round message after they received all the 2nd round messages, then this asynchronous network behaves synchronously. So we just don't care about the problem.
In some asynchronous protocols, I believe with consensus and stuff, you can get some sort of pathological behavior because maybe some malicious actors send their message in round 3 and round 2 and stuff like that. Are there any potential attack vectors in this that we need to account for?
Again, no, because in consensus, you have a requirement for liveness. In consensus, you have a requirement that JSON is not able to make us abort. And so I want to broadcast, and JSON's aim is to have you not receive my output. We have to prevent that. That liveness is exactly what we call guaranteed output delivery. That's a requirement, and that's where we have problems. But if I don't care, I'm allowed to abort, then there is no subtlety, no pathological cases. Because what happens is when we're trying to do consensus, so Miguel sends me a message, and also waiting for Nico's message. I don't get it. I don't get Nico's message, and I have to think, what am I supposed to do? Did he send it to me? It's just taking a while to get here, or maybe he's corrupted. And then Shashank tells me, no, I got the message from Nico. Didn't you get it? And I'm saying, well, are you corrupted, Shashank, or is Nico corrupted? And I don't know what to do, but I have to proceed because otherwise we die on liveness. But because we don't have liveness here, we're doing security with aborts, then I don't care. Now, so what happens if I don't want security abort? What happens if I want to do Schnorr signatures with an honest majority? And I want to guarantee, or 2/3 honest majority, actually, because with an honest majority, if I'm doing authenticated, I can do authenticated business agreements. So what happens if I want to do honest majority Schnorr signatures with guaranteed output delivery? Don't use my protocol. That's not the protocol. You're going to have to build that on top. But the bottom line is, what will you do? You'll do something similar, built on, but just with a threshold, so the majority is enough, built on top of some asynchronous broadcast. And then you'll have to inherit whatever lower bounds you have for the asynchronous consensus.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I actually have a somewhat of a general question here. There is some standardization effort going on for threshold cryptography. Do you know where that's at? Like,
So
are they trying to standardize some?
Are you talking about what IETF did with Frost?
NIST, actually. They have recently put out some.
Yeah, NIST is doing some initial work. The question is, where is it going, and what's the purpose?
They're trying to standardize some threshold signatures too, right?
In a document like, the educational documents that NIST produces. Like, for example, I got really annoyed hearing about zero trust all the time because it sounds like a ridiculous term to a cryptographer. So actually, NIST has a really good document on zero trust. And when you read it, you say, actually, it's just a terrible name, but it's a really good concept. So they actually have very good educational documents. And then they have standards. But when they have a standard, in NIST, it actually means something. Like, it means, for example, you can use it in a FIP certified module. So I find it hard to believe that that's where they're going, but maybe they are, I don't know. To me, it seems more like it's informational at this stage. I also have a big problem because on the one hand, yes, standardization is always a good thing. On the other hand, the field is moving so quickly. I'm going to standardize something now. How long is it going to be? How long is it going to be a good solution for? I don't know. Like, we have improvements and things change, and it's a very, very dynamic field right now. It's not a block cipher, right? A block cipher is a block cipher. We've known since the late 70s how to build secure block ciphers. And a hash function, yes. So hash functions we did badly, or maybe we can improve, but a hash function is a hash function. It's not like, so yes, we can build, AES is a much better block cipher than DES, and not just because of block length, but in terms of speed and whatever, and maybe more modern hash functions are better, but we're okay with stability around that. In MPC and threshold signatures, I feel it's a bit premature if you ask me.
I see. Okay.
As in, for an informational document, I think it would be great. That's a difference.
Do you see this, because this is like a more general scheme, do you see it being combinable with some, say, non-discrete log, quantum secure, maybe lattice-based alternatives to Schnorr?
So the what's at the heart of the scheme is simply the coin tossing element, right? That's what you use for the key generation. You'll use that same key generation for if you want to do threshold ECIS, or if you want to do a threshold ECDH or any of those things. So that is generic. The rest is, I mean, it's just the very nice linear properties of Schnorr makes it go through so nicely. The fact is that ECDSA, yes, ECDSA has that element, and you can use that for ECDSA, and I do in my protocols. But ECDSA screws everything up because it's all you have the inverse, and it becomes very, very difficult. The lattice schemes have their own challenges. I think that for decryption, it's not so difficult, but for signing, you have these Gaussian samplings and other things that, it's a completely different problem if you ask me. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think because the main problem I've thought of is the homomorphic property of which you were alluding to, which is nice in the case of ECDSA. Yeah, I don't think I have any more specific question than that. It was a bit generic.
Okay, so let me have a look at Tim's question here. Any signature scheme plus Merkle inclusion plus verified compute equals arbitrary policy enforcement. So I'm not sure I understand what that means. I have a signature scheme. I'm not sure what Merkle inclusion means. Yes, I don't think I understand.
Sure. I'll try to clarify. So in the context of, a system like, some of the modern ZK systems like the Cairo VM or RISC-0 or others, it seems as though one ought to be able to just, verify signatures in there for, any scheme that you can implement on in a Turing machine, and then roll up, those individual signatures into a proof, that says, some such set satisfies some arbitrary policy, right? The idea being that these systems allow you to witness arbitrary decision procedures, and they have this recursive verification property, so you can kind of do this incremental verification of the compute state as people pass their data around. And so I'm wondering, like in the context of, like say threshold security specifically, it seems like, for instance, like an easy way to do like a K of N signature scheme would be to, have K parties sign the thing in, again, whatever signature scheme they like inside one of these zero knowledge virtual machines, and then prove that K of N of them did it, which you can do with, subset proofs and such. And so I'm wondering if, there's an opportunity, for the threshold space and maybe for other kinds of like proof carrying data type things here to kind of generalize and take advantage of these general compute witnesses.
Yeah, so I think that let me start by answering a question that you didn't ask, and then get to your question. So the first thing I want to say is that at least in the type of, like, for example, in my paper, but in general, when for these direct threshold signatures, K of N versus K of K is exactly the same in my opinion. Why is it exactly the same? Because if I do key generation for K of K, because that's what, if it's K of N, then you'll have K parties generate, then each party will share its result from the distributed key generation using a polynomial sharing with VSS to make sure it's maliciously secure, and you'll now have a polynomial K of N sharing.
Right.
When K parties come together, they just use Lagrange to go back to additive. So in these sort of settings, K of N versus K of K is the same thing, but it's very different when. But what I fully agree with you is that we have to distinguish between, again, two very different points of view. One is where we have Schnorr, we have ECDSA, give me something that does that. Versus a very generic statement, which is, I want to enforce KFN policy, I want to have KFN parties approve something. How do I do that? And here I can do many things. So Bitcoin can do multi-sig, right? You can do that. This is a KFN signature by definition, but it's not a standard single signature. You can use in Ethereum, you can do multi-sig in Ethereum as well. It's just going to cost you gas because it's not a standard single signature. You can, in general, enforce KFN and have them prove that KFN have, one could want to use RSA, and another party could use ECDSA, and someone else could use Schnorr or EDSA. It's the same thing, and this would all be, this could be rolled up into one proof that for these public keys we have these signatures. But
it's not going to get accepted by a Schnorr verifier, right?
Exactly. The idea, the beauty of MPC is that you're able to generate a single signature, and you don't care what mechanism you use to generate it. So if you want to use an HSM, I don't know why you would want to, or if you wanted to use, a smart card, which would maybe make more sense in this sort of situation, or if you wanted to use MPC, the application doesn't care how you generated this signature. It's completely transparent to the application.
Right.
And I
the
think
algebra just works out.
Yeah, and I think that's very powerful. It means it saves costs. It gives you more flexibility. I'll give you one example where you think of a KVN sort of scenario where you have KN parties with different signatures, maybe with different devices. One of the big problems, at least in a commercial setting, institutional setting, is what happens when people leave. Okay, so I'm authorized to sign in my company, but I leave. Now we need to replace me. Or what happens if we need to change the threshold even? Instead of having K of N, I now want K plus 2 out of N because maybe the amount of funds in the wallet got much higher, or maybe I have a new CSO in the company who's giving me, more stringent security requirements, or maybe the regulator came and told me they want to change it. Replacing people, changing thresholds, all of these things in MPC happen for free. In fact, they're not even exposed externally. But with all these other solutions, you actually have a big problem in how you can actually do that.
But for something like private key generation, say you have a distributed private key via Shamir. I think your scheme uses Shamir secret sharing as well for that. If it is such that, it's say 5 people here can reconstruct the private key, and then we want to reorganize the organization so that we suddenly, double the amount of people and want to increase the threshold as well, then we need to regenerate the private key, right? Because like with the currently existing thing, the security will be decreased.
So, okay, no, I mean, yes and no. I mean, you're right that if I want to increase from 5 out of 10 to 7 out of 10, then what you're saying is, 1 second, but now it's split between 7, but before it was split between 5, so those 5 people could have known it in the past. But and therefore I want to generate a new key and transfer funds on chain. But I don't think that's the argument. The argument isn't that I think that this key has been compromised. What I'm saying is until now we've said that we assume that out of 5 people, at least 1 has been honest. But now, and we don't think that it's been broken. Well, what we want to do is we think the threat landscape has changed. We want to increase it to 7 out of 10 now. So what we do is we have those 5 parties come together and run an MPC protocol to share it to 7 out of 10, erase their previous shares. And as long as now you don't have, and as long as until this point you didn't have any 5 corrupted parties, then everything is fine. So what you say is, as long as at this point, until this point, there were at most 4 corrupted parties, then from this point on, there's at most 6 corrupted parties, everything is fine.
But the original 5 people then had shares along a degree 4 polynomial. So wouldn't you have to?
You erased the old shares.
Yeah, so you erase all shares. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was a way of saying, yeah, you don't change the private key, but you have to create new shares along a new polynomial of higher degree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things also that's very powerful to NPC is that you're able to do that without doing on-chain operations. In a legacy cryptography world, you would say you can get the effect of doing things like key rotation without actually changing the public key, which is really important because key rotation and changing keys is painful. But also in the cryptocurrency space, changing a key means doing an on-chain transfer. So if we're able to manage these keys and change the participants and change the threshold and change the number up and down, whatever, for all different things, all in MPC, then changing the threshold doesn't happen very often, to be honest. But changing the number of participants certainly happens. So we have 5 out of 10. Someone leaves and someone else joins. This happens all the time. How do you want to be able to cancel their key share? How do you do that? Very simple. You have every party generate, or a threshold of parties generate, a random sharing of 0. Okay, a random polynomial that shares the 0 value. Everybody shares that, and we just add those shares to what we have, and what we actually end up getting is a brand new random polynomial that shares the same key. But the person who left the company didn't get those new shares, so their share is now complete garbage. So all these things just work very, very nicely with the NPC solution. It doesn't mean you can't do them otherwise, but it's very practical from an operations perspective as well.
And all of this, like talking in the cryptocurrency space, you don't have any trust assumptions on the communication channels between the MPC participants, right?
Question is what you mean by that. I mean, I'm assuming that the world has a PKI.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But for dishonest majority, you don't strictly need it. Like, as long as it's security up until one honest party, as long as there's one honest party, let's say we're all corrupted except for you, okay? Then it's secure. Now let's say that's not the case. Actually, me, you, and Ventali are honest, and the rest are corrupted. But not only that, but the channels are corrupted. So what happens is Nico is interfering in messages that I send to you. That's fine. Let's just pretend that you're the only honest party. It's still secure. But I think that's bad practice. It's just not best. It's not crypto. It doesn't follow your best practices for cryptographic sanity. So I'm assuming of a PKI. I'm assuming that everybody is communicating via PKI. In the threshold setting, it's almost even necessary. If it's a 404 setting, then we know who we are. We communicate with each other. We have TLS channels anyway. That's just for good practice. But in a threshold setting, we don't know which of the 4 of us are coming together. So how can we communicate? Pretty much via this coordinating machine, right? Otherwise, I don't know who to send the messages to. I might send you a message, but you're not even participating. So we overcome that by communicating via some coordinator machine, which is, I wrote the paper in that way for that reason. But if you think about it, we're encrypting and signing everything. That coordinator is just a channel that can deny the service, but nothing else. So the communication can be direct or it cannot be direct. But if it's direct, then I still would want to assume TLS, but I don't have to. If it's via coordinator, then of course I have to.
Yeah, and I guess importantly, this incurs very little cost on the parties, and is like another benefit of say this approach to a wallet versus a multi-sig, that you don't have any gas cost incurred in doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no gas cost, and you have the flexibility. Again, if you have a 2 or 3 multi-sig, and now someone leaves, or even someone loses that third key gets lost. So you can work, but you can't recover back to 2 or 3. you actually have to transfer the funds. Whereas with an MPC solution, it's 2 or 3. We lost one of the keys. We still have 2. Thank God we still have two of the pieces. We can now run an MPC protocol to generate 2 or 3 again and recover that additional share. So you can do a lot of the things that otherwise you'd have to do on chain. You can do them off chain, and that's extremely important.
And I guess also the signature size is, you said that it can be verified by any Schnorr verifier, but I assume that you need some metadata related to the identities of the signer and possibly public. No?
No. In fact, mine is not even just verifiable. Mine is actually a Schnorr signature.
Yeah.
It's unlike Frost. Actually a Schnorr signature, or it's indistinguishable, computationally distinguishable from a locally generated Schnorr signature. But even for things like Frost, no, you don't need any metadata. There's a public key and there's a signature relative to that public key.
So I can post that signature on chain, and it doesn't matter. It like the size of the signature or proof size or whatever you want to call it is independent of the number of participants.
It's a standard Schnorr signature. You cannot tell the difference between that being generated in a ledger hardware versus 23-party MPC protocol. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, that is a really nice property. I assume that maybe you needed some metadata for the participants, so that is really nice.
The participants themselves need, but it's not on chain. Anyone else?
Maybe slightly off topic, and feel free to dismiss if it is. I saw these other papers about what they're calling synchronous signatures, where they essentially get the coin tossing for free. And they're looking at like aggregate signatures in that model. Is that something that is kind of trivial in a way if you have the coin tossing for free?
What do you mean by coin tossing for free?
So they assume that all parties that are signing have access, like round by round, they have a clock, and with each clock cycle, they have access to one value that they all agree on.
I don't see, obviously this helps, but I don't see that makes it trivial. I don't see that makes it trivial.
Okay.
You can do one round signatures with that? I mean,
yes.
Assuming it's with pairings or something though, right?
I don't. So the ones outside the random oracle model, yes. I forgot. There were some constructions I think that are not using pairings.
But standard discrete log? No. Maybe lattices, right?
Random oracle discrete log.
No, or discrete log with random oracle.
I think. Yeah.
Really can do non-interactive signatures? I find that hard to believe.
So I'll double check.
Do you have a name of a paper?
Let me check. I have it somewhere in my notes.
Synchronous signatures.
Synchronous aggregate signatures. It's so there's a Matthew Green paper. But I think this one is pairing based. And then there's one on RSA assumptions.
It's much easier.
Sorry?
RSA assumptions.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using
Do you
BLS,
have both papers or
much less interaction necessarily? It's different situation.
Sorry?
So I was just saying, if you're using BLS, then you have to do the multiplication, which is most of the issue.
Yeah, BLS is anyway non-interactive, right?
Yeah.
BLS anyway, just everybody sends their. Well, I have to say that I discovered that nobody has written a simulation-based proof for BLS. I have a simulation-based proof for it, but I just haven't written it yet. So let's hope I have some time and I'll write it up and put it on ePrint. The time period. Most once for each T. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, with pairings, we can do. I think actually that what you're saying is there's an additional requirement around the synchronous signatures about something about time steps, because RSA signatures are non-interactive. What do I mean? I mean that if we additively share the private keys with D1 through Dn, I compute Y to the Di, everybody computes that, you just multiply them together. Pairing-based BLS type signatures also non-interactive. So I think you're just adding to that. Under discrete log functions, like things like ECDSA and Schnorr, I don't think we have anything like that whatsoever. And even if
if the coin tossing comes for free, we wouldn't get sort of a single round.
Yeah, because it's a public coin tossing, where this is a private coin tossing. Another thing which I want you to note is that in Frost and other places, they have, and also in some work by Fireblocks, you have you have this thing where they say, oh, you can run the first message of the protocol and have it all ready before you know the message that you're signing on, and you only need to do one message when you get the message to sign. Right? Because if you think about it in Schnorr, what happens is you do this coin tossing on the R, that's 2 rounds, and then you need to hash it all together and add stuff together. But you only need the message in the last round. As everyone says, great, no problem. Well, no, it's not true, because the in at least the standard Schnorr ideal functionality that I'm using, right, that certainly doesn't work, because the ideal function will only give you the message, will only give you the signature after it gets the message. Basically, what you're able to do in such a model is choose the message as a function of the R, which is part of the signature. And now you want to ask, well, does that matter? So for Schnorr, it's not too hard to argue that, to prove in like the same random oracle proof, again, to show that it's actually okay. But then you have to pay for the forking lemma and all of this stuff as well, and you have a complicated proof. And there's also a subtle difference here. Again, what happens if Schnorr signatures are secure, but actually not because of the forking lemma, and the random oracle doesn't work here? Unlikely. Okay, I agree. But if that's the case, then if you've built a Schnorr signature, you build a Schnorr signature. But it's less interesting for Schnorr. For ECDSA, it's much more interesting. Because for ECDSA, you cannot actually prove that to go through without making new ECDSA assumptions that you can prove secure under some very weird generic group model, which doesn't really work for ECDSA because you're actually mapping the point to a value. So I would be very wary about that as well. Like this idea that I'll do this pre-processing and then I'll have 1 round for that. If you want 1 round, use BLS. If you have control, of course. We often don't have control because we didn't, design the system. We're just working with existing systems.
Does anyone else have questions?
Okay. Well, we have an hour to go before the Australia versus France game in the Soccer World Cup. So plenty of time to get ready.
Yeah. So if no one else have question, let's call it a day. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yehuda. This is really cool. Good luck in the World Cup.
Thank you. I'm not sure that Australia has much of a chance against France, but whatever.
I mean, Saudi Arabia beat Argentina earlier today. You never know, huh?
Yeah, but that would be like the worst day ever in World Cup history, right? Saudi Arabia beating Argentina and Australia beating France. Like the world has gone upside down. So I'm not even sure I want that to happen, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for discussion. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.